So for this last week, we're going to turn our attention from the study of epistemology, or the theory of knowledge, to ontology. That is the study of the nature of existence. And in particular, we want to look at the nature and existence of a deity, particularly of the sort of monotheistic deity that we associate with, for instance, the Judeo-Christian tradition. So we'll talk a little bit about what the goal of this kind of investigation is. What is it that philosophy of religion does and is about? And we'll talk about how discussions in this area might violate the spirit of that goal as well. We'll look at a number of different types of religious beliefs, and part of the reason why we'll do that is because the tradition that we're looking at is really sort of narrowly focused on a discussion about the nature and existence of a Judeo-Christian type of monotheistic deity, a worshipful deity. And so we want to recognize that there's a wider variety of religious beliefs and experiences than those that are talked about specifically within this canon. We'll want to talk about the significance of religious beliefs for religious believers. So religion is oftentimes a very prominent centerpiece in someone's worldview. And in fact, what I'll suggest is one of the attractions of religious belief is that it provides a sort of prefabricated worldview, a set of beliefs about oneself and the nature of the universe and one's relationships to the universe and to society, codes of conduct, structure, sense of identity, right? All of these things are things that religion can give to someone. And so we'll talk about the significance of those features of religious belief, because oftentimes people think of religious belief not in terms of a worldview, but in terms of a conviction. And within the philosophy of religion is a very strong emphasis on the rational evaluation of religious belief, considering it as another hypothesis about the nature of the world and another possibility for the worldview. We'll then talk about the origins of this tradition within Western culture. And one of the things that I'll note during this discussion is that the origins of the philosophy of religion as it's manifested in Western culture, they date back to before Christianity, all the way back, for instance, to the ancient Greek philosophers Plato and Aristotle. And they also were influenced by what we might consider other religious traditions, for instance, Islam. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about the beginnings of this tradition in theology in the Middle Ages. So what's the goal of philosophy of religion? Well, the goal of philosophy of religion is to rationally consider the basis for the various beliefs regarding the existence of a monotheistic worshipful deity, particularly focused around the conception of the Judeo-Christian God in Christianity. And part of that goal is to constructively criticize particular religious beliefs and or arguments for particular religious beliefs. So to rationally evaluate the reasons for and against particular doctrines. And in doing so, to better understand the sources and limitations of our own or of others' convictions on this matter. And so in this way, the philosophy of religion is a prime example of philosophy in the way that we saw Perry and Russell in the introductory chapters talking about what it is philosophy does and how it goes about doing it. Now, what would constitute a violation of the spirit of this kind of discussion? Well, to engage in an inquiry only to reinforce your dogmatic conviction. So going in with a sort of confirmation bias as to what ought to be found or determined, it violates the spirit of a rational inquiry. To criticize people because of what they believe, instead of criticizing beliefs and arguments for those particular beliefs. And this can be very significant in the context of philosophy of religion, because people oftentimes, their religious beliefs are very core. They're ideologically and emotionally central to their own identity. And so when people criticize a belief, it can be very easy for people to take it as a criticism of themselves and not of the belief. When people offer up arguments against a belief, it can be considered or thought of as an attack against them. And so trying to be as respectful as possible in the context of these discussions is very important, because the goal isn't to alienate or to create derision, but the goal is to have constructive and purposeful investigations into the bases of these beliefs, their strengths, their weaknesses, and so on. Finally, the goal definitely is not to merely indoctrinate people into any particular belief regarding the existence or the nature of God. The goal here is not to proselytize or in any way argue specifically for a particular belief. It's to consider the merits of particular beliefs by evaluating the arguments for and against them. In the next segment, we're going to turn our attention to different types of religious beliefs. We'll talk about this sort of wider universe in which the kind of monotheistic Judeo-Christian deity exists, and in which philosophy of religion focuses.